starting. He's not going to start yet. You know, keep talking.
All sorted.
Yeah, all sorted. We're good. Brilliant. Thank you. Right. Whenever. Yeah, give it a few minutes. And, yeah, because we're
Hi everyone. Hello. 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 Can you hear me? Oh, that's good. That's brilliant. You can hear me now. Thank you very much for turning the volume up. That's brilliant. Welcome to the medicine talk. I'm Drew Tarmy. I'm the academic lead for admissions for medicine here at the Manchester Medical School. And also just to welcome everyone, friends, family, parents, etc., who are actually, if you're in this lecture theatre down here, they're just behind that sort of screen up at the top there. Watching you. So we've delayed very, very slightly just so that we could get people in upstairs. But welcome to the university, and I'm going to talk to you about the medicine programme. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what makes Manchester unique in terms of our curriculum and in terms of the structure of our programme, and then I'm going to talk through what you'll learn over the course of the programme, and then one of the things that we get asked quite a lot, how we select students, so how we run people through the selection process, right from the very start, kind of thinking about application. I think most of you are here because you're at least thinking about medicine, and you want to know how we as a university select you, how we use the various different components of the selection process, the UCAT, the interview, and then I'll finally end up by talking a little bit about the interview process itself. I'll probably talk to you for about 25 minutes to half an hour, and then we've got some of our student ambassadors who are current medicine students who will be coming in, and then we can use the last part of the session as a question and answer, because I'm sure you've got loads and loads of questions. Rather than listening to me drone on, you can got that opportunity to ask the student ambassadors. Apologies if my voice goes. It seems to be all right now, actually. We've been talking to lots of you this morning and been teaching this week, so my voice is slowly starting to go. I don't quite sound like this all the time, but welcome. Okay, so we're different in terms of the structure of our programme and how our medical school functions. And the first thing that I'd say is visit every medical school that you're thinking of applying to. Now, one of them or a group of them will feel right, and they're the medical schools to apply to. We're quite different in the way that we structure our curriculum. So we have a lot of traditional elements to our teaching, things like dissection and anatomy, laboratory classes, physiology, pharmacology, kind of traditional wet lab science. We're a research-intensive university as well, so one of the top research institutions, and we're quite an academic medical school, so you get to engage with research right from year one of the programme, right to doing your own research projects and quality and evidence projects towards the end of the programme. So we're quite academic, we're quite traditional in that sense. We use practical classes, we use lectures. We also, on the other hand, use innovative small group teaching, so case-based learning. Manchester was a pioneer of problem-based learning back in the 1990s, and we're going through a transition to team-based learning, which is another type of learning that focuses on clinical cases. So the structure of our curriculum that you'll see in a second is a little bit different to how you've been taught at A-level or degree level or IB. And in a typical week at A-level, you might have several different subjects that are timetabled that are, you might have your chemistry lectures and classes on a Monday or a Tuesday, and then you'll have the biology, and then you have maths separate to that. And some medical programs run in a similar way. So you might have a cardiovascular series of teaching running alongside a respiratory, alongside, say, endocrinology. The way that we structure our curriculum is a little bit different in that each week you study a separate core pathology and you follow a patient through their journey in the course of the week, right from initially presenting in a hospital or a GP or out in the community, right through diagnosis, through management, and through follow-up. And then the next week you move on to another pathology. There are parallel streams running throughout the programme and different themes running, and we loosely group the cases together, as you'll see in a few slides' time. If you do some of the cardiovascular cases, then the respiratory cases, then the endocrinology cases, etc. But that's one of the key differences in that we really focus our teaching in a very, very patient-centred way, and we emphasise small group teaching as well as large lecture theatres. So we're one of the biggest medical schools in the country, and it's usually between us and King's and some other universities, but we're one of the largest medical schools in the country. But we also have some of the smallest group sizes of teaching and the widest variety. Okay, so how will you learn? As I've said, we use mixed methods. We blend everything through from anatomy through to small group teaching, case-based learning. We have a focus on clinical immersion from years 3, 4, and 5. So, like many medical schools in the Russell Group, the first 2 years are spent here on campus, largely. And you get that full university experience, so you get to be a fresher, which is great after COVID. You get to experience what it's like to be on campus and to be in that campus environment. And then from year 3, you're placed in one of our clinical education campuses, which is based out at a hospital site. So year 1 and 2 on campus with some early clinical experience. So we've got GP placements and we've got hospital placements in year 1 and in year 2. But the main focus of that clinical immersion comes from year 3, 4 and 5, where you're actually out in the NHS, you're out in the environment and you're immersed in clinical learning. You reflect on your practice, you keep a PPD portfolio where you reflect on your experiences and your encounters with patients and with the various services that you'll be working in. We prepare you really well for practice, and one of the things that our graduates always tell us once they've got their first jobs in the NHS as junior doctors in their foundation year is they tell us that they feel really well prepared for practice. And as you'll see in a few slides' time, the year 5 programme is specifically structured so that you're shadowing junior doctors and you're helping them and you feel that you hit the ground running when you start your first jobs as a junior doctor in the year that you graduate. We use technology enhanced learning, and that's been emphasized by the pandemic, and we were in a really good position to use some of those tools. We've always used some element of distance learning, particularly in the later years of the program, where you're all based out on placement in different parts of Greater Manchester across the northwest. And it just doesn't make sense to bring you back on a Friday afternoon at 5 o'clock from Preston, Crewe, Greater Manchester, Salford into this room and to give you a lecture. So some of those things are best done online. We've gone back and we're transitioning back to face-to-face teaching, which has been actually this is the first time since 2019 that we've had a group of prospective applicants, and here it's actually really nice to be back. So we emphasize that, and we emphasize small group teaching and lots of contact time with the people that you'll be working with the tutors. We're a very friendly medical school as well, but we do make use of technology enhanced learning. Our students have an iPad from year 3, 4 and 5. That's not an advert for Apple and for iPads. But instead of getting things signed off on bits of paper, we pioneered the development of a system called eForms and a way of getting your all the cases that you need to see, all the skills that you need to get signed off can be done electronically. So we really pioneered that, and actually we've sold and disseminated that system to medical schools across the world. We found that the virtual learning environment wasn't quite good enough for medical students, so we wrote our own, and we developed our own system. So we've been at the forefront of technology-enhanced learning for many, many years. Here's our spiritual home. I'm sure some of you have been on tours of the Stopford building today. It's just down the road. That's the spiritual home. Actually, a lot of your lectures will be in this lecture theatre and other lecture theatres on campus across the Stopford. It was built in the 1970s. It has been modernised extensively inside. It's where most of the academic staff that teach on the programme live. It's where our PBL, TBL rooms are. It's where our clinical skills centre is in Stopford. So that's kind of our spiritual home. But as our course has grown over the years, we use a lot of lecture theatres in buildings like this one. This is the Stopford Medical Library. You might think, where are the books? Actually, the books are just out of shot to the left-hand side there. Lots of study space, lots of really nice study space in the Stopford building. We've got dedicated simulation teaching facilities. So this guy here is SimMan, and it's a mannequin that can be used, that can be programmed to demonstrate and help you practice a lot of your clinical skills. You know, you can give it a murmur, you can take its pulse, you can actually get intraosseous access and do all sorts of things with them. So we use a lot of simulation and a lot of technology-enhanced learning. Now here's for the course content. So I'm going to talk you through what happens from year 1 through to year 5. I'm going to put more of an emphasis on year 1 and 2, and actually some questions that you might want to ask our students when they arrive. And all of this is online as well. I can see people taking pictures. Feel free to take pictures. It's in the brochure and it's on the website too, so you don't have to worry too much about that. You start off in year 1, and we start off with a small block which is called Essential Skills. And that's particularly, we've got people coming from different qualification systems from all around the world. Some people have done IB, others have done A-levels, some people are graduates. And you've all learnt in different ways before. So we bring you into Essential Skills and we show you how we teach, how you learn at Manchester, and introduce you to our way of working. And that's just a short block at the very start of year 1. And then we've got 2 semesters, so we teach to a standard university semester in year 1 and 2. We start off with life cycle and cardiorespiratory fitness. So life cycle covers everything from human reproduction and fertility, all the assisted fertility and conception techniques. It basically encompasses a lot of the endocrinology, a lot of the child development. It also covers end-of-life care and palliative care as well. Cardiorespiratory fitness covers a lot of the core cardiovascular and respiratory pathologies, as you might see. So everything from heart attacks through to valvular disease, through to asthma, COPD, dare I say it, COVID, in cardiorespiratory fitness as well. ECE, which you'll see in year 1 and year 2, is early clinical experience. And as I said, that's GP and hospital visits in the first 2 years of the program. So you get to make links with hospitals, you get to make links with GPs, and that keeps you focused in your learning. We also have a really well-developed clinical skills and consultation skills program. So actually Manchester is really known for its consultation skills and that patient-centered learning. So we work in very small groups. We work with patients and we work with simulated patients who are actors who have been trained specifically to behave in the way that patients do. So you get to practice your skills in year 1 and 2 with simulated patients before working more extensively with patients in hospital and in GP practices from year 3 to year 5. Year 2, we start off with mind and movement, and then we go on to nutrition and metabolism. So mind and movement is psychiatry, neurology. It also contains a lot on the musculoskeletal system as well. So everything from Alzheimer's disease through to schizophrenia and beyond, really. Early introduction to mental health. Nutrition and metabolism covers the gut and the alimentary system, covers the renal system, look at how your kidneys work, how urine's produced, and again, some endocrinology, things like thyroid dysfunction covered there as well, and the prostate. In terms of the teaching, the clinical skills is always linked to what you're teaching. So a typical week across year 1 and 2 of the program, you would open the case, you'd review your case, you'd follow your patient through their journey with the assistance of your tutor. You'd be thinking about what sorts of diagnostic tests would be performed. You'd be thinking about what basic sciences you need to understand in order to cover the case material that you've got in the case week. Your physiology and pharmacology classes would complement that. So say, for example, if you've got a case on myocardial infarction, heart attack, well, you might need to learn in that week how to record an ECG. In the week before, you might have learned how to take a blood pressure. In the week after, you might be learning how to perform a cardiovascular examination on that patient. The consultation and communication skills is then linked to the case as well. So it's all about taking a cardiovascular history, taking a targeted history from those patients. On into year 3, so we work with a number of different trusts across the Greater Manchester region and across the North West. So we work with MFT, Manchester University Foundation Trust, which we have the Oxford Road site, which is just down the road from here, just past the Stopford building, the MRI hospital. We've got Wythenshawe Hospital, which is out near the airport. We work with Salford Royal and the Northern Care Alliance, again, quite close to Manchester, and also Preston and Chorley hospitals, which are up in the north of the region. So you get assigned to one of those clinical education campuses in year 3, and that becomes like a mini medical school. It becomes the focus of your learning for years 3, 4, and 5. And then from that central trust, you rotate out to the district general hospitals, to the community placements, things like community mental health, and to general practice, and then you rotate back. We've got a really diverse geography, everywhere from Preston in the north through to Leighton in the south. We've got some placements on the Isle of Man and obviously Greater Manchester as well. So we serve a really huge area. And when you're selecting a medical school, it's also quite important to, you're thinking about the city, thinking about the teaching, thinking about the region, but also you want to be thinking about the patient population that school serves, and the community that the school serves as well. So we've got really diverse placements all across the region. Year 3, you largely start off with so you do some clinical skills, you do some teaching, we've got some simulation training, and you've got your general medical and surgical placements in year 3. You've got specialty placements in year 4, and we've got the preparation for practice that we talked about in year 5. So I think it'd be quite nice to actually ask when they arrive, we'll ask some of our student ambassadors to tell us a little bit about the placements that they've had and where they've been and what they've seen. Running alongside all of that, we've got personal and professional development, so you'll be keeping a reflective portfolio, and I haven't talked too much about assessment, but I'll talk about that now. You'll be recording reflections on the patients that you've seen, the things that you've done, the skills that you've acquired. At the end of each semester, you'll have an exam, a multiple choice exam. You'll also have an OSCE. And you've probably heard of MMIs, multiple mini interviews, which is how we interview medical students. A bit like interview speed dating, where you go into one room and an interviewer asks you a question. You've got 8 minutes in our MMI station. You come out of that room, you go into another. An interviewer asks you another question. That's the MMI interview format. An OSCE, or an objective structured clinical examination, or clinical competency assessment, is very similar to that, where we've got a series of stations. And in one station, you might have to examine a patient and report your findings to an examiner. In another station, you might have to perform a practical task. In another station, you might have to take a history from someone, explain something to someone. So it's a clinical examination. So we've largely got multiple choice papers. We've got an OSCE. We've got some essay-like writing that you do, so your research projects in each of the years, your personal excellence path, which is where you produce a scientific poster, you write a bit of extended writing in year 2, you go and carry out your own research projects in the later years of the program. And the focus of engaging with research shifts, so from year 1, year 2, it's literature-based, and you're kind of refining those writing skills, those scientific skills. Into year 3 and beyond, you're doing a research project. That can be a laboratory project, that can be a project out in the community, it could be an educational project. As we go into years 4 and 5, that research starts to develop a quality and evidence sort of feel to it, which is where you're thinking about, well, actually, how can you might be doing things like clinical audit, you might be thinking about pathways, you might be thinking about how to improve service delivery and how to improve patient care in those projects in year 4 and year 5. So that covers most of the assessments. Multiple choice, a sort of OSCE-like clinical competency assessment, a personal and professional development portfolio, and the PEP. Okay, now we're on to thinking a little bit more about how we select applicants and how you apply to medical school. So one of the really important things, hello, these are our medical students. They've just managed to get some lunch, so we'll be grilling them on placements and things, in a second. So now we're thinking about admissions and how to get into medical school. Aptitude testing. So you'll probably be aware that most medical schools in the UK use either BMAT or UCAT selection tests alongside your A-levels, alongside your other qualifications to select you for the medical school. Manchester uses UCAT. Most medical schools in the UK use UCAT, as do a lot of dental schools. A smaller number use BMAT. UCAT's probably the single most important thing to get right in your application process. We've put a lot of emphasis on UCAT. And actually we've seen over the last 2 years of the pandemic that medical schools across the country are relying more on these selection and aptitude tests. So UCAT's incredibly important. I'll tell you how we use it in the next few slides. But you'll sit UCAT if you're thinking about applying. Later on this year, you'll need to register and sit UCAT. Testing starts in July and runs through to the end of the summer. So start thinking about UCAT early. Do the practice tests on the UCAT website. They're free, you don't have to pay for anything. Interview preparation courses and UCAT preparation courses are a waste of money largely. So it's really worth avoiding them and spending your hard-earned money on other things. Do the free practice tests. Do the practice tests under time conditions and really give your all for the UCAT. It's really, really important. Work experience is something that we get asked a lot of questions about. And work experience has really changed over the last few years. So most medical schools actually had been re-evaluating how we look at your work experience, and the type of work experience and the amount of work experience that you need has changed quite a lot. Excuse me. We do need you to do some work experience, and the reason that we ask you to do some work experience is to work out that this is the profession that's right for you, this is the course that's right for you, to find out a little bit more about yourself, to reflect on your experiences. We're not looking for specific types of work experience. You know, shadowing's not more useful than something else. We like to see a sort of long-term commitment to doing some work experience, but we're not counting the number of hours that you've done. Okay? You need to have enough work experience to prove to yourself that you're capable of doing the programme, and that it's the career that's right for you. Here at Manchester, we don't evaluate your work experience before you get to interview. So one of your interview stations will be on your work experience, and we don't assess that before you get to interview. So try not to worry too much about it. It's okay to have a selection of face-to-face work experience. Lots of people have done really wonderful things during the pandemic. Supporting people in the community, working with disabled adults and children. Some people have shadowing experience, some people have managed to speak to doctors. Other people have done online work experience. Lots of different, the Royal Colleges offer some work experience, the RCGP does. Other medical schools offer work experience. On your UCAS form and on your non-academic information form, I'll talk about in a second, there's the opportunity, even things like open days like today, you've spoken to students, you've spoken to staff. You've been to the clinical skills session, you've interacted with people, and that's either reaffirmed your decision to apply for medicine, or it's informed your decision to apply for medicine in some way. So you can talk about all sorts of different things on that application form. Don't get too obsessed with work experience, with the caveat that some other medical schools might still place a lot of emphasis on it. But entry requirements, everybody's always desperate to know what our entry requirements are. Our standard offer is AAA at A level. If you have a contextual flag, it's worth looking if you do. So if you've been to a school that's got exam results that are somewhat below the national average, or if you live in a postcode that doesn't send many people on to higher education, then you can check on the university website whether you're eligible for a slightly reduced offer. But our standard offer is AAA at A level, biology or chemistry, and a second science. You need 3 A levels. The equivalent IB points, 37.766 at higher level. I'm sure most of you have already started your A levels, but I've seen a lot of people today that are starting to think about what A level subjects to choose. We don't have any preferences. We don't prefer some subjects to others. As long as you meet our minimum requirements, to keep your options open for plenty of medical schools, then it's a good idea to do both biology and chemistry, but we don't require both of those subjects. 7 GCSEs at grade 7 or above, so A or A star in old money. You do need a 6 in English language and maths, and as I said before, the UCAT is incredibly important. So thinking about personal statement, I put personal statement up there because lots of people call it personal statement. We don't read your personal statement. Most medical schools, gasps, the horror in the audience, and a lot of medical schools don't read personal statements. If you have written a medical personal statement, or you're going to for another medical school, it's okay, you can still use that personal statement. Once you've applied, we'll send you a link to a separate form, which is a bit like an expanded personal statement. And that'll ask you, why do you want to do medicine? It'll ask you to list your work experience, the things that you've done to prepare for coming to medical school. It'll ask you about your team working. It'll ask you about your hobbies and interests as well. And we ask those things because we won't assess this form before interview, but when we get to interview, one of those interview stations will be about this non-academic information form, and the interviewer will ask you questions about the form that you filled in, and you discuss your answers, and that'll form one of the 5 interview stations. Okay, so at least you know what one interview station is now. It's no surprise, really, is it? Most medical schools are going to ask you why medicine, why this university, why this course, and tell us a bit about your work experience. So that's one guaranteed interview question that you can get out of the way now. In terms of interviews, don't over-prepare for interviews. Don't come into the interview like a robot. You know, the interview at Manchester is it's very open. It's very relaxed. It's a conversation really between you and the interviewer. So we're quite relaxed. We're quite informal. I think I've got some nods from the front row. We are. It's a really friendly interview process. We're obviously ranking you, and we're obviously scoring you, but we do it in a nice and non-terrifying way, and we find that we get the best out of you by doing that. So that's the non-academic information form. We reserve the right to use the personal statement if we absolutely have to, but we normally don't read the personal statement. We get asked some questions sometimes about hobbies and interests. We're not looking for specific things. People get really worried. They say, oh, I've not captained the rugby team and I've not played the violin. I didn't do either of those things. Your hobbies and interests should be things that are interesting and things that you enjoy. It doesn't matter what those hobbies and interests are. I mean, why are we asking you that question? We're asking you that question, of course, as you all know, to show that you can balance your work, your academic life, alongside your social life. We are asking it for that. There's a more deep-rooted kind of reason for asking that as well. So the people that are going to be interviewing you, lots of them are clinicians, lots of them are academics. Most of them aren't planning to retire before you graduate from medical school. The medical school interview is a bit like a job interview. Most people that start medical school finish medical school and they end up in the workforce. So these people have always got in the back of their minds at interview, is this an interesting person to work with? Can they be one of my colleagues in the future? That's one of the reasons, just are you a nice, interesting, well-functioning human? Is really one of the questions that we're asking that for. Don't get too worried that you haven't got grade whatever piano. It's all the stuff that's important to you as an individual. Okay, so here is the schematic of the flowchart that we follow. Different medical schools do it in different ways. If you're not quite sure which schools you're going to apply to, look on the Medical Schools Council website, because the MSc website lists all of the different university entry requirements. So it's a nice, easy place to go if you're not quite sure, and then you can go out to the university websites from there. The first thing we do, so remember to apply by October the 15th. That's the deadline for medicine. We'll do an academic sift. So we'll look at your predicted grades and we'll look at your GCSE grades. And if you meet the requirements, then you progress on to the next stage. So we use a threshold-based admission system. If you meet the requirements at this stage, then you pass on to this stage. And once you get to this stage, we're not too bothered about what happened before. Okay? So unlike some medical schools, we don't assign a certain number of points to your GCSE scores or anything like that. We don't score your work experience prior to interview. Then we move on to UCAT. So this year we got about 3,400, 3,500 applications, and we interviewed about 1,500 people. So it's competitive, but don't let that put you off. Okay? Most people get through the academic sift. A few hundred people drop off at this stage. So please, 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 you've only got 4 choices for medical school. So make sure you at least meet the academic criteria for the medical school you apply to. So double check that. I know it sounds like a really basic thing to be saying, but that improves your chances. Academic sift, then we rank people using their UCAT, and we set a cut-off score for UCAT. All our historic data are published on the website, so if you just Google Manchester Medicine data, you'll find all the UCAT scores from the last 5 years or so there. And then we invite the top UCAT performers to interview, and we interview people really starting in December and running through the year. Please bear with us, it's a time-consuming process to interview so many people. We as a medical school interview more people than most graduate recruiters sort of do as well. So it's a really, really intensive process. It's also quite a manual process at times. Contact the admissions team if you have any questions. So we'll interview about 1,500 or so people at the moment, and we'll make offers to people based on their performance at interview. So we tend not to look back at things earlier on in the process. We'll rank people at interview and make offers that way. If your UCAT score is just slightly below the cutoff, then we will look at other factors. We'll look at any contextual flags on your application. We might go back and look at whether you're doing any additional qualifications or your GCSE performance to make a few more invitations to interview, just to make sure that we give people around that UCAT cutoff a fair chance at a shot at an interview. And then we'll make offers from about February to March. We've already taken the decision that we're going to do some of our interviews online and some of our interviews face-to-face for next year. And it'll be up to you to choose what you want to do. It's the same format. It's still a 5-station multiple mini interview. But when we get through the UCAT screening and the holistic screening stage, we'll invite everyone to interview, and we normally have that done by sometime in November of the year of application. So if you're applying in October, we'll, towards the end of November or early December, start to send out invitations for interview. You'll get a link by email, and you'll go onto a booking site and you'll basically book whether you want a face-to-face interview or an online interview. And then you have your interview starting in December through to March really, and then we start to make offers, and we make offers in batches. The interview itself, and I promise this is one of my last slides because I've talked at you for a while, but I want to tell you a little bit about our interview. So I've already said that one of the interview stations is the non-academic information form, personal statement style stuff that we'll ask you about. Communication. We're going to be testing your communication skills. So we'll have some element of role play in our interview as well. We're not looking for medical knowledge. Okay, we're not looking specifically for medical knowledge or anything like that. It's a good idea to kind of keep yourself well informed about medical topics in the media. We've done COVID to death over the last few years, so I'm not writing any COVID-related communication stations this year because I'm fed up of it. But we write new stations every year, and so do keep yourself informed about medicine in the media. But we're not going to require specific medical knowledge. We're testing your natural communication ability. We're not testing amateur dramatics or anything like that, so you don't have to be, proper sort of actor to pass the communication station. Again, just think about being polite, think about being you as a person, because that's what we're trying to get to. Critical thinking and problem solving, so we'll ask you to analyse things. We might read you a statement or give you a scenario and ask you to analyse it and tell us what you would do in that situation. There are often not right or wrong answers to any of the interview questions, so we're not looking for a right answer necessarily in a lot of these stations. We're just looking at how your reasoning process gets you to sort of your solution. So we're not looking for anything like hidden in the process. We'll get you to solve some problems. We're not giving you a maths test or anything like that, even though some medical schools might do. We're going to give you some hypothetical scenarios, some problems to solve, and you'll talk through those with the interview. As I said, it's a 5-stage MMI. It's a bit like interview speed dating, where you've got 5 different stations. You've got 8 minutes per station, and you're in the station with one interviewer. Staff and students interview for us as well, and we find that it's a really nice, pleasant process. Okay, now it's time for some questions. I'm going to invite our student ambassadors up as well. So what I'll do is I've got this microphone on here, you've got this one here, I'll go into the audience, and between the 3 of us, we'll pick up some questions. Do you want to just introduce yourselves to start off with?
Hi everyone, I might have met some of you at the atrium before. My name is Yannis, I'm a 4th year student.
Hi everyone, I might have met some of you as well in the atrium. My name's Claire, I'm a 5th year student, so I'm just about to graduate.
Scary, isn't it? Thanks, guys. Questions? Do you have some of you must have some questions. Fire away. Yeah.
What qualities does Manchester look for in a doctor?
What qualities does Manchester look for in a doctor? Is that a question for me or for them?
Anyone.
Oh, anyone. What qualities do we look for? I'll answer that one because it's a nice straightforward one. The General Medical Council, so the General Medical Council is the regulator for doctors, and the GMC publishes a document called Good Medical Practice on their website. So they're the qualities that we're looking for. It's not great bedtime reading. It is quite a long and boring document, but Good Medical Practice outlines the values, the behaviours, the standards. It's essential reading for anyone that's applying to medical school. So Good Medical Practice tells us everything we need to know. Great. Anything else? So there's a guy there, and I've come up there. Hello.
Do you accept the Welsh Baccalaureate?
Do we accept the Welsh Baccalaureate? Yes, we do. That was an easy one. One there.
Do you guys value EPQs at all?
Do we value an EPQ? EPQs can be useful. So an EPQ won't normally form part of your your offer unless you're through the holistic route. An EPQ can be quite useful if you drop a grade on A-level results day, or a 4th A-level can be quite useful if it helps us make that decision, but it doesn't normally form part of our selection criteria. There was another question somewhere around here, yeah?
What are your options in terms of an intercalation year?
Intercalation.
So I intercalated after 3rd year. I think it's quite common to do after either 3rd or 4th year. You can either do it in a BSc, so an undergraduate, or a master's. I chose to do it in a master's. I did mine at St Mary's Hospital in Manchester on reproduction and pregnancy. But there's loads of other topics you can choose from. There's quite a general one called like medical sciences, so it would mainly be based on whatever project that you chose to do for that year. I've got friends that did undergrad, so you join the 3rd year of an undergraduate degree of like biochemistry or biomed or neuroscience, so it's really flexible into kind of what you're interested in.
Great, and anyone can intercalate as well. It's not a competitive selection process too. Anyone can intercalate. Brilliant. Any more questions from here? I'll try and sort of divide them up. Yeah, fire away.
Let's say like you haven't had like specific medicine-related work experience because you haven't been able to get any, but you have been doing like volunteering and other work experience, like let's say working in a school with children.
Okay. Yeah. So the
be taken into account.
Yeah, the question was, what if you haven't got any specific medicine work experience? What could you do? And would working with children be useful? Yeah, it would be, particularly if you're working with disabled children, working with vulnerable children. What I would suggest is that you do need something related to medicine or to caring. So you're part of the way there. I would suggest that you have a look at some of the online work experience. I think you've probably got enough face-to-face stuff, but I'd suggest that you have a look at some of the specific medical online work experience. And obviously you've been here today and you've spoken to students. So I think you're kind of mostly there. I'd add something extra, so caring or medicine, but I think you're pretty much mostly there. Yeah, there's another question here. Fine, ask the question, there you go.
How many offers do you make?
Oh, how many offers do we make? That is a very good question. Prior to the pandemic, again, it's all on our website actually, but prior to the pandemic, we interviewed about 1,800 individuals each year, and we made about 980-ish offers. And we reduced that last year a little bit. This year, we've reduced it even further. But that was a specific request that came from the government for medical schools to only make as many offers as they had places available. I think for your year, if you're thinking about applying for next year, what we're hoping to see is that the A-level grade profile, the number of A's and things that people are receiving kind of slowly starts to go back to what it was like in 2019. So I'd expect we're using a waiting list actually this year to make sure that we don't over-recruit. But I would suspect that the number of offers that we make will probably start to edge back up over the next year or two. We'll probably start to kind of go back sort of 700, 800, 900. Yeah. That's a very complicated answer. Any other questions? Sorry, the lady in the middle down there. You have to shout a bit. Yeah. What experiences have you had on placement? Tell us about some of your placement experiences and where you've been.
So everyone is based at, you're based at one base hospital, and that's where you're essentially going to spend your entire medical school journey. My base hospital is actually next to the medical school. It's the Manchester Royal Infirmary. So I've been usually based quite centrally. In third year, we usually cover quite basic core specialties, such as looking at specialties that involve the heart, the lungs, general surgical specialties. In fourth year, instead, we actually go into much more niche specialties. So looking at the eyes, the skin, much more specialist stuff. It's very varied. The kind of time course of the placements is also very varied. And it also depends what you're able to do as well. So, for example, in my GP blocks, I've been able to actually have a really good level of independence where the GP has allocated a list for me to see, examine patients, take a history, and then formulate a management plan and the next steps forward. This was obviously done under supervision, and we were able to kind of make a good learning point out of this, where we were able to kind of see why I think this is appropriate, what other options that may be available. So all in all, I'd say placements are really well supported, very varied in terms of your exposure and what you do. You'll kind of progress through the years in a way that you'll be able to gain quite rich experience in a lot of different facets of medicine, so that when you do finish, you are able to feel comfortable embarking on different jobs and feeling confident in your skill set and knowledge.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So there's a lady in the corner that's been sort of waving a hand for a while. Shout out your question.
The interviews online, how are they carried out?
Via Zoom, the interviews. So the question was, the interviews online, how do we carry them out? So we use Zoom, and so we get 5 applicants, 5 interviewers, and some of our student ambassadors who run the sessions actually. So we do a quick briefing, and then we get you into the Zoom room, and then we put you into breakout rooms, and then you'll be in a breakout room one-on-one with the interviewer. And actually, the face-to-face interviews work on the same basis. You know, instead of being in a breakout room, you're in a physical room, but the questions and the structure are the same.
Do you think online you're at a disadvantage compared to
No, the question was, do you think online you're at a disadvantage to face-to-face? Actually, after 2 years of doing online interviews, no, I think they're about the same. And actually, in the past, we sometimes did online interviews for our international applicants, so they didn't have to fly to the UK. And we never found any difference in score. And it's an applicant, it's first come, first served, but we're hoping that half of our interviews are online and half of our interviews are face-to-face. And you've already been to Manchester and seen the university, so some of you may decide to be interviewed online so you don't have to make the trip twice. Others will want to come and do it face-to-face, so it's entirely up to you. And cost your choosing, it's sort of your choice, really. Yeah, great. Lady there.
What's the difference between PBL and CBL, and how would you say it's better than, for example, traditional learning?
Oh, right, okay. That question was, what's the difference between all the various TBLs, EBLs, PBLs, and traditional learning, and why do I think one's better than the other? I don't think one's better than the other, actually. I do think that case-based learning, team-based learning, PBL, whatever we want to call it, they're all sort of variants on a very similar theme, where you're working in a group to kind of get to the core knowledge versus sitting in a lecture theatre being told the kind of core knowledge. And obviously our programme has a bit of both. Microphone's gone. There we are, it's back. I'll be in a lecture theatre and after being here in the autumn talking about the cerebellum and how you balance and things like that. So we do some of that. But doctors work in teams. Doctors work in teams and doctors kind of learn in teams. So that's really why case-based learning is shown actually theoretically to be kind of superior in terms of the information that you retain and your ability to work in teams. But different people learn in different ways. So actually I wouldn't try and sell you a specific curriculum. I'd say go and investigate what all the medical schools do, and some of them will feel right, and they're the ones to go with. So actually you might prefer a case-based learning, you might prefer a very traditional approach, but yeah, it's whatever suits you really. Right. Anything else? I'll just try 3 people together. We'll go on the front row.
How much feedback do you sort of get from staff while you're there? Like, do you get like a tutor? Is it like one-on-one sessions? Like, how much do you get to help one-on-one? Like, if you're really struggling with a certain section?
Great. First of all, it's rare that medical students struggle because you're really good. We are here. I've got you, ladies. You don't have to keep your hands up. You're generally a very, very good cohort, and you're very academically capable. We're here if you need us as staff. But actually, it's quite rare that students require a lot of academic help because you're all really clever. It's pastoral support and things like that that are sometimes required. Things go wrong. It's 5 years. Things go wrong. People suffer bereavement, people become ill, and that's where SPS, as the Student Pastoral Support Services, really come in. But would you want to add anything to that, guys?
No, just that it is really supportive. Like your tutors, even if they're not like your pastoral tutor, you get to know like your anatomy demonstrator really well because you'll be with them for the whole semester. So everyone's really approachable. Like even if they're not your tutor, they'd be more than happy to chat to you and provide you with any support.
Great, and those 2, I'm conscious of time, so I'll just kind of give it a few minutes and then we'll be good. Great, far away.
So I wanted to ask if references are required as like evidence of work experience, and also if patient experience was also like something you could use in your application.
Yeah, so first question was, do we want references from work experience? No, we do sometimes spot check it. If we've got worries about it, we might spot check it, but normally not. And can you use your own experience? Yes, you can. So you can use your own experience of the healthcare system as part of your, not as the entirety of your work experience, but yeah, you can use personal experience as well. And there was another question around here, I think, as well.
I was going to ask, I know at Manchester you can learn a language like alongside your degree. Is that the same for medicine, or is like the work a little bit too intense?
We don't offer that programme at the moment. Yeah, so we did have a European Studies programme, which has kind of been a bit of a casualty of Brexit, I'm afraid. Yeah. That's a short answer. I'll come over here because there's a gentleman on the end, and then we'll, yeah.
In an average week or month, what would you say is like the ratio of time spent in labs, in classrooms, in GP placements, dissections, that sort of thing?
Are you thinking in year 1 and 2 specifically?
Yeah.
Or, yeah.
Yeah, so year 1 and 2, roughly speaking, Mondays are usually when we'd have the opening PBL case. So that's kind of essentially akin to a seminar kind of situation. From what I remember, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we'd have lectures to kind of support the learning agenda and what we're covering that week. We'd also have one of the days, I think it was Tuesdays, would be our physiology pharmacology sessions. So that's when we'd go into a lab and do some of the practical that was related to the case that week, perhaps. And Fridays would usually be, from what I remember, PBL close, so coming back and discussing the case, but also we'd have our anatomy sessions as well. So going into the anatomy labs and you know, the cadaver labs and covering whatever was needed.
You've also got communication skills sessions as well, where you're working with actors who play the role of patients, and you get a session of that every week to support whatever theme of the case that you're doing that week. And they're really good because it's just an opportunity for you to practice talking to patients, having like sensitive topic conversations that you wouldn't really have exposure of much anyway before university. So it's a really like safe space to practice that, and you get that every week.
Great, thank you very much. And I've probably got time for one. There you go.
So is a student who gets 3 A stars more likely to get an offer than, say, a student who just gets 3 A's at A level?
No.
Okay.
A student with a higher UCAT score is more likely to get an interview. Yeah. So 3 A's versus 3 A stars. And actually what you'll find is some medical schools do advertise an A-star AA offer, but you actually find in reality those medical schools will take a lot of their students who get 3 A's. So again, we did think about whether to increase the entry requirements to an A-star, and we decided against that. But the best way to increase your chances of getting an interview is to obviously get a higher UCAT score. But yeah, you don't need 3 A-stars. That's a bit of an ask, isn't it, really? I think we've... Oh, okay, we'll do one more. Sorry about that. It's, so many questions, so many people. There you go.
Just wondering, what's the ratio of mature students on the course, and also what's the general ratio of gender?
Okay, gender's an interesting one, actually. We used to be about 50-50 until a year or so ago, and which was slightly different to the trend of medical schools in the UK. We are, and I can't remember the exact statistic, but we have more female students than male students at the moment. 60-40, that sort of split. It feels fairly gender balanced, doesn't it? Actually, as a
never noticed that there's a disproportionate number.
Yeah. And the second question, just remind me. Mature students. It varies year on year. It can be up to 20% or so of the cohort being mature or graduates, but it varies. You know, sort of 15 to sort of 20% of the cohort. Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you very much, everyone. We are going to finish the session there. We will be going back because we need to clear this room for the next talk. So we'll be going back to the atrium where the medicine exhibition is. So if you do have any questions, please do come and find us. Visit all your medical schools. Enjoy the day.
You can exit at the back and at the front. So there are 4 exits. Please use all 4. 2 at the back, 2 at the front. Also, can I just say, if you're meeting your parent or carer or guardian who's ever with you, please can you go outside the front of the building? Anyone that is waiting to meet a parent, please go outside the front of the main entrance. Thank you.